What if embracing your identity is the key to finally loving yourself? Hey, this is Steph, and welcome to the Together Moving Forward podcast. A podcast helping 2S LGBTQI plus people embrace self love and self respect so you can celebrate yourself with pride. In this episode, you'll discover how embracing your LGBTQ identity strengthens your self love and mental well being, why pride and representation are critical for feeling seen, valued, and understood, how art and community help you move from isolation to empowerment. Today's conversation is about fully embracing your identity and building pride grounded in authentic self love. This episode will help you take that next step forward. Hello again, I'm Steph Vachon, and I'm a human being. Welcome back to the Together Moving Forward podcast. Embrace your 2S LGBTQI plus identity with pride through self-love. No matter where you stand in the 2S LGBTQI plus spectrum, we are all connected. And if you ever struggle to fully love and respect yourself, you're not alone. And this podcast is here to help you. As someone who has navigated my own journey of self-acceptance as a queer, I know the power of hearing voices that reflect our own experiences. In this podcast, you'll hear real stories and conversations that leave you with practical tools, fresh perspectives, and the confidence to embrace who you are with pride. To start, I need to say that I'm not a psychologist, a specialist, or someone with a college degree. I'm just a regular guy here to share with all of you and support each other. I will share my journey, and we will all share journeys together. We'll learn from each other how to move forward. In today's episode, I sit down with writer and poet AJ Dolman to explore how storytelling, advocacy, and creative expression help reclaim LGBTQ identity and build real self love, the kind rooted in truth, pride, and self respect. So, AJ, thank you so much for being here with us today, and welcome to the Together Moving Forward podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Steph. I really appreciate it.
Your writing often explores identity, queerness, mental health, and perception. What draws you to those themes, and how do they reflect your own lived experience?
Those themes are all part of who I am and how I've seen the world. So I try to convey that through all of my art forms, including my poetry, my fiction writing. The way that I explore it in fiction is more through the difference in perception between people, really playing off and highlighting where people go on different paths in how they see the world based on their own identity and their own experience and perception. So in the poetry, I try to just naturally focus on who I am and how I see the world differently, because I think that's what we all bring to art forms, is our own unique perceptions of the world. And of course, there's not enough that's been said about mental illness. There's not enough that's been said about queerness, which is a vast topic and as different for every individual as the individuals are. So there's a huge amount of room for me to be able to explore these topics throughout, well, any art form, but particularly for me through poetry.
And how long have you been writing?
I have been writing since I was little. I think it really started with my mother telling me stories, dramatic stories in Dutch, and acting out all of the themes and stuff. And so to me, storytelling was a very visceral, real, and accessible format for understanding the world and also for enjoying the world. A lot of what she conveyed was really joyful stories and hilarious family stories. And so starting from that point, I think I was always a writer, but I really picked it up in university. I started doing a writing major at the University of Victoria under folks like Patrick Lane, and I had the honor of being in a class with Essia Jogin, which, she just blew everybody away. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her work, but she did Washington Black and a bunch of other wonderful books. So just seeing the authenticity that other people could bring to storytelling really inspired me. And so I started from that point.
In your poetry collection, Crazy Mad, you dive into mental health with honesty and nuance. What inspired you to approach these topics through poetry?
Well, it's funny. I was just talking to my sister last night about how I feel compelled to tell the stories that were not supposed to have been told. Mental health was something that we didn't discuss in my family. And going back generations, it's clear that there was a lot of trauma. My parents grew up in the middle of the Second World War in the Netherlands. They were both born in 1932. So they had an awful lot of trauma. And then their parents before them had grown up in the First World War. So there's a definite legacy of, large scale trauma as well as many smaller traumas and issues that people individually dealt with. And for me, I have anxiety and depression, including a panic disorder. I really felt that there just isn't enough that is being said about the individual experience of those things and how it mixes with other parts of us too. How it's not something that is happening sort of off the page and separately for people. It's a part of daily life for so many millions of Canadians alone, let alone internationally. But it really drives me to want to say the things that were not supposed to have been talked about for so long, so that I can connect with other people. And the most important response to the book has been people coming up to me and saying, thank you for writing it. I really connected with this poem or that poem, or, I really felt understood, or I really saw myself. And that is worth everything.
It's still really taboo, do you think? To
Oh, it
talk about
really
these
is.
topics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we hear the Bell Let's Talk Day every year, and it drives me crazy, of course, because, here's a corporation that says that on the front, but, has many internal issues with its own staff and is a large scale corporation. So obviously, as much part of the problem as part of the solution. But we also say the let's talk part, but we don't have the resources then for people to actually talk. We're not funding the healthcare system in ways that actually support and achieve positive outcomes for people across the board. We see people in terrible situations who can't access any sort of mental health supports or can only access them on emergency basis by ending up in the emergency room, and then are ultimately turned out with very little support. And that's, not a flaw of the caregivers for sure. It's a flaw in how we support the system behind it. Mental health care is part of healthcare, and we really need to make it accessible for people if we're going to say, on the one hand, oh yeah, let's talk about this, but it's great and it's good that we're starting to lower some of those taboos, but we're not offering the resources for people to actually deal with it.
And we're not talking about it enough.
Oh
Like you were
no.
saying, there's like a few days during the year that companies will say, let's talk about it. But then the rest of the year, it feels like we have to be perfectly healthy and strong and in shape all the time.
Absolutely. And that is so not the reality for so many people, in the same way
Mm.
that I think, even physical disability is still frowned upon. It's the cult of productivity in our society, that you have to be constantly productive for some sort of greater economic good of your nation or the world in order to have value. And we are valuable in and of ourselves just by our very existence.
Exactly. How has storytelling, whether poetry or fiction, helped you navigate or reclaim your own sense of identity?
It has certainly helped me navigate it. I think that it's on two levels. One, on the artistic level, where I can explore who I am and come to terms with parts of not just who I am, but how I see the world and how I navigate the world around me. I think it really, through writing and storytelling, I've come to terms with the fact that non-binary exists and is an option, and it's something that is accessible to me as a person, and where gender didn't ever feel right to me. And that's partly having the tools and resources to actually have words for these things, to understand that there's a history of people existing outside the gender binary for all of humanity. And now actually having the terms, the reference points to understand how that can be applied, and how, okay, that's just a natural part of me. So that's been really important on the one hand. And then the other part for me is also at the other end of the publishing spectrum, which is where you actually connect with people, where I get up and read the work and find community in doing that. My favorite readings are pride readings, or even just readings where there's a strong mental health support contingent in the crowd, where people are really finding themselves and connecting with the work and with me, and that then becomes the start of a greater conversation. It's not just an end point in and of itself, that here I have a poem and it's done and you read it and that's that. But for me, art is about how you interact with it. So the fact that people come to it then and bring their own reading, their own interpretation to the poetry, to my stories, is hugely fulfilling. And then, of course, makes me want to explore it even further, explore who I am and what that means in the greater sense. But it also gives me a huge respect for people with various intersecting identities and other identities, because we're all on that sort of journey together to, share who we are and the perspectives that we come from.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think it took so long for humanity to really talk about this? I mean, I remember in the 80s, I never heard the word identity,
I think the short and very long, complicated answer to that are both the colonial patriarchy, because I think that there were lots of cultures that were talking about it and that just accepted, the existence of people on various gender and sexuality spectrums as a natural part of life and society.
Mm-hmm.
And that paradigm absolutely did not fit the rise of empire, in the last couple of thousands of years, where you need to keep people very categorized, very ordered, very, in their lane, as it were, and ideally as suppressed as possible by a greater entity, which, is often the government, often disguised as religion. So on the individual basis, I think that the way that we live in that society then creates a lot of room for people to just want to do basic categorization of everything and keep it simple in their minds. But most things aren't simple. Love isn't simple. That's not straightforward. I mean, people aren't simple and straightforward. We're all not just one thing or the other thing. And, sexuality and gender are huge spectrums and can also shift over time. And our touch points culturally also shift over time as to what it means to be properly gendering and to be the right orientation and that sort of thing. But I think we all need to move beyond basic categorization. Like, yes, in grade 5, you learn that there's, a circle and a square and a triangle, and you learn that there's, black and white and colors. And most of us move on from that, right? We ultimately understand that, even if we don't get it, there's a lot of, algebra out there. And there's a lot of, very fine detail of hues between the colors. And, then there's all the colors that are off of what we can visibly see. And those are concepts that most of us learn as we get older. But I think it's very comforting for people to try to stay in the, hyper simplistic, this is red, this is blue kind of categorization. But as an adult, I don't think that you really get to do that. You have to grow up and realize that there's a lot of fine detail and great ranges of what we can all be.
Exactly. What role do you think poetry and art can play in building safer, more inclusive communities? And how do you see that reflected in your own creative journey?
Art is communication in the end. So if we enhance communication and give people access to more ideas, to more art, to a greater scope of ways to see and understand the universe around us, then I think that automatically supports people in having greater understanding and giving people more room and giving people more space to be themselves, to exist as they are. You know, the more you get to know something, the less scary it is, the less othering you do of people who are in that element, right? And right now I'm watching Heated Rivalry, which is fantastic. It's based on the Rachel Reed books, and it's steamy and it's fun and all of that sort of thing. But one thing that it's absolutely doing is breaking down barriers for people. I mean, it's being shown, like the clips are being shown at actual hockey games. And, we don't have an out NHL player yet. Although I'm sure there are, plenty of people who are, in the NHL who are not all exactly the same. But producing art expands the conversation, and
Mm,
expanding the conversation makes room for people to feel safer because they know that they're not just being othered by people. So I think it's a core thing. Unfortunately, right now we're seeing a pushback societally against forms of art that express, gender and sexual spectrums. That's unfortunate. I'm in Alberta right now where, this is a huge issue.
yeah,
And this is something that we have to push against because, again, what is the purpose of hypersimplistic thinking and pushing people outside of safety is to be able to control them. And
exactly.
that's ultimately the goal for any sort of othering, is to try to have some sort of sense of control. And if we're pushing down on people that we think are other or less than, then we're just opening the gate for somebody else to do it to us too.
Yeah,
Right. So it's very scary times. What we're seeing in the States, what we're seeing in Alberta is this othering of people. But the people who are doing the othering have to understand that those tables turn very quickly and you end up on the other side very quickly. Society has shown this, history has shown this again and again. The rest of us need to keep being loud and keep being vocal and keep making art and keep communicating that we exist and that we respect the rights of others, and that that's a fundamental thing that most grown-ups need to do.
yeah, yeah. Everybody needs to do it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've helped lead BIPLUS Canada, advocating for BIPLUS visibility, resources, and change. How
Yes.
has that advocacy work influenced your view of BIPLUS identity and the role art can play in social change?
Bi plus people under the big bisexual umbrella, so people, regardless of the terminology they use, but who are attracted to, at some point in their life, more than one gender or have the potential to be, make up, according to the latest statistics, well over half of the LGBT community. And we get about 1% of the resources, and
Mm,
are often just lumped in and treated as if we are, just a side effect of the L and the G. And the resources get targeted there without a lot of sense of what the differences are and how we move through the world differently, how we have different needs. We have the highest rates of mental illness, sexual assault, poverty, homelessness, of all of the orientations, all of them. This has a huge effect on people in the BIPLUS community. I talked to a lot of people who say that they didn't feel that they had the right to use the label, who didn't feel that they were allowed to take up space. And that has huge impacts on self-worth and how people then move through the world. So that advocacy to me is extremely important, and it lifts so many people up together if we support BI plus people, because we have intersections with so many other identities. At least half of trans people identify somewhere under the BI plus umbrella. And of course, we have huge representation among people who are impoverished, people dealing with mental health issues. So it really is a matter of a rising tide lifting all boats, that if we support the BI plus community, which has also been one of the most excluded communities, then we are not just setting a great example for how to support human beings and draw people in who have been othered, but we are fundamentally helping people across a huge spectrum of existence. To me, it's very exciting advocacy work. And artistically, there's so much that feeds into that work. Again, the one of the best ways to communicate is through art. And we're seeing everything from poetry to television series to movies to books and visual art, dance, and that just are conveying such a vast array of stories. And it's the individuality of those stories that's really important too, because we're showing people who are unique and individual and different, and yet the same as so many of us, in that they're dealing with a lot of the same issues, and being able to tell their story, being able to convey their stories to themselves, to each other, and to broader society is absolutely key in achieving, equality, equity, and true inclusion in society. So I think it goes hand in hand with artistic production, because we really count on that. One of the things that we do at BI Plus Canada is we have a bi-monthly, because we never met a pun that we didn't like, but we have a bi-monthly newsletter, and we have all sorts of focus in there on artistic production and connecting people. We have, beautiful graphic design now that was done by one of our board members, and, really, art is such a touch point for people. It's really how we convey and connect with people. And it's wonderful to see. We were at Capital Pride this past year. We had a booth for the first time, and the amount of people that just bounded up to us and were like, it's me, I'm represented here. Like I get to see myself here, and they're so excited, and it was adorable, and it was wonderful, and it was really heartwarming. And yeah, I know it's why I do what I do. So it's really exciting work.
What message do you hope queer readers, especially those questioning or struggling with their identity, take away from your work?
That the struggle is okay, that it's part of the process. It's totally fine to be where you are at in your journey of figuring yourself out. And honestly, I'm a bit older now, and it's been a journey, but the journey doesn't end, right? We keep changing and exploring who we are. And that is, one of the great gifts of life, is that we get to explore who we are over time, and with the help of people surrounding us. So I think ultimately the message that I would love people to take away is that it's process, and you get to stop and look at any part of the process and investigate it. But you also have to remember that it is just part of a bigger process of being who you are. And if you can be who you are, then you also get to help other people be who they are. Because we're all either lifting each other up or we're pushing each other down. There's no real middle ground, unfortunately, for people, and learning who you are really allows you to help others.
So it's a journey. It's not a destination necessarily, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There's no finishing point for figuring out who you are.
So AJ, that was so interesting. Thank you so much for being here with us today. That was great. Thanks a lot for the work you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'll be on tour with Day of Pink at the end of March and start of April throughout Ontario and Quebec if people want to come hear me talk.
Yeah, and all your information is going to be in the bio of this episode. So thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again. Bye.
Bye. Before we wrap up, let's remember this. Your LGBTQ identity is valid, your journey is unique, and your pride begins with how deeply you choose to love yourself. Today, we explored that embracing your LGBTQ identity is a powerful step towards real self-love. Pride and representation create spaces where you feel seen, valued, and respected. Art, storytelling, and community help transform isolation into connection and self-doubt into confidence. A huge thank you to AJ Dolman for sharing their honesty, insight, and commitment to uplifting LGBTQ voices through art and advocacy. Remember, identity isn't a destination, it's a journey. And every step you take towards embracing who you are is already an act of pride. I'm always looking for inspiring guests for the podcast. I'd love to have you or someone you know share your journey with pride. The world needs your story. It has the power to change lives, and your voice matters. Reach out and send me an email today. Also, I am now booking keynote speaking engagements. My talk is How I Finally Learned to Embrace My LGBTQ Identity with Pride, and how you can too. Details at togethermovingforwardpodcast.com under speaking. It is already time to say au revoir just for now. Join me every Monday and Thursday for brand new episodes of the Together Moving Forward podcast and learn how to embrace your 2S LGBTQIA plus identity with pride through self-love. Wherever you're from in the world, we are all connected. Remember, solidarity beats hate. The more we unite, the stronger we become. Because at the end of the day, we are all equally human and we all deserve the same rights. One last thing before I go, put your hand on your heart and repeat after me. Yes, you and me together. My love is powerful and deserving of respect. Yes, my love is powerful and deserving of respect. From shame, guilt, silence, and rejection, to pride, freedom, healing, and love. Together moving forward. Thank you so much for being here with me today and for sharing this journey of growth and love. I truly appreciate you. See you real soon. Ciao. Do you know anyone in the LGBTQ plus community who feels disconnected from their true self, wishing they could embrace their identity with confidence and pride? Share this episode now and help them step into self-love and self-respect so they can truly celebrate who they are with pride, feel empowered, and make a real difference in our community.